Tak Allah, Can Tao, Tak Allah, Tak Allah.
What are you doing?
I'm just filming my review for Desperation.
Oh. How did you like it?
It was pretty good.
Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer.
So today I'm doing a book review for the Stephen King book, Desperation. Oh yeah, I guess I could probably hold up the book for y'all too. Desperation by Stephen King. I read it, and this is the review for it. Watch it. But in all seriousness, folks, I read this, or I was supposed to finish this in the month of May, because this was the May winner for my Stephen King Patreon TBR wheel spin thingy that I do for my patrons every month. And this was the winner, which was chosen by two lovely patrons, Keiju8 and In Passant. I spun the wheel for May, and this was the winner for the month of May. And like I said, I was supposed to finish it in the month of May, but my girlfriend, Stacy, who was visiting me from Canada, visited me in like the last 10 days or so in May, and we got sidetracked and I didn't get to finish it. But today, as of filming, June 2nd, I have now finished it. I had about like 150 pages, 200 pages left. So I've been reading it at the beginning of the month in June, and I'm just now getting around to filming the review for it. So here it is. But hey, enough of the preamble. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So Desperation by Stephen King was released in 1996, and it's sort of hard to talk about this book without also mentioning its companion novel, The Regulators, because he released these simultaneously on the same day back in 1996, and they're essentially twinners. And if you know The Dark Tower at all and Stephen King multiverse stuff, you'll know what that means. But basically, the concept behind these two novels is that you have sort of the same characters in each novel, but they're sort of like parallel worlds for each other, and different events happen in the novels. And it's interesting because he wrote this under the Stephen King name, and he wrote The Regulators under the Richard Bachman name. So they do have slightly different styles and tones to them. And it's funny because for a lot of people, they either enjoy Desperation more than The Regulators, or they enjoy The Regulators more than Desperation. And definitely for me, the first time I read these, I much preferred The Regulators. I would give this book probably about 4 stars. And the first time I read Desperation, I gave it actually more, 3 stars. But this second time around, just reading it now this past month or so, I've actually quite enjoyed it. I'm not going to say it's one of my new all-time favorite King books, but I did like it significantly more the second time around. And I think now I would give this book 4 stars instead of my initial 3 stars when I first read it years and years ago. So I did quite enjoy it more the second time around. It's also sort of hard to describe this novel in any coherent way, but basically what you need to know, well, you don't really need to know anything before going in, but if you want like a quick synopsis of at least the beginning of the novel, it starts out with these various characters entering the town of Desperation, Nevada. So you have sort of like a desert setting, which already is fairly unique for Stephen King, right? Because he typically writes in colder environments like Maine or Colorado. So getting an environment or a setting like Nevada is pretty interesting. So like I said, you get people entering the town of Desperation, and they're being pulled over by this mysterious cop whose name is I have a hard time pronouncing his name. Intrigian, something like that. But anyway, you get pulled over by this mysterious cop, and you follow these group of people who are being pulled over by him, and weird things start to happen, and he starts bringing them back to the town of Desperation for an unknown reason to the reader at the beginning. And like I said, this this book is just bonkers. This book is out of this world crazy. It has so many just what the hell moments, like what just happened, and it's a lot of fun to read. I will admit, it's such a fun book, and I want to go like ask my past self like why I didn't enjoy this novel as much as I did this time, because I had a lot of fun reading this book. There's a lot of, even though it's a lot of dark stuff, there's a lot of laugh out loud moments, just like, oh my god. But at the same time, even though this novel is very fun, and like I said, there's a lot of like crazy batshit moments in this book, I didn't really get attached to any of the characters that King introduces in the novel, which, you know, is a staple for Stephen King, right? Like, he slowly introduces the characters and you slowly start to get involved with them and start to empathize with them, and then he does the scary shit that he does in a lot of his books where he puts his characters through the ringer, and then you start to really feel for the characters. But with this book, I really didn't give a crap about any of them. I just kind of wanted to see what kind of shit he was going to put them through, and granted, it was a lot of fun doing so, but like whenever a character would die or would get like wounded or just bad stuff would happen to them, I didn't really care about the characters themselves, which is weird for a King book, because normally you get attached to a character and then like that's why King books are so good. But for this book, I was just kind of like, this is awesome. and I didn't really care. Like, if a character died in this book, I didn't care, which is very non-King-like for me, at least. I think a big part of that might be the fact that I listened to the audiobook for this book, and the audiobook is narrated by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Stephen King. And Stephen King is a fantastic writer. He's my second favorite author of all time, but man, he is not a great narrator. Like he narrates the prose fine, but like once he's like talking in like the characters' voices, like he does no character voices. Like it's all just Stephen King narrating the voices. He does no inflections. He doesn't really do anything. So that part of the audiobook isn't great, where when he's like speaking the character's dialogue, he does not do a great job. So maybe I would have liked the book more, and maybe I would have empathized with the characters more if they would have had more distinct audio voices. But when it's just Stephen King the whole time, it's just like meh, 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 meh. But like I said in the beginning, I had a great time with this book. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it much more the second time around. And it's one of those King books where, like, even though it is a lot of fun to read and you don't really have to like dig deep into the book to get like a deeper message behind it, just because this book is just, like I said, just crazy bonkers, there is still an underlying theme to everything. And definitely the underlying theme for this book is religion, where, you know, some books, like the undertones or the underlying themes in his books are like The Shining is like addiction or family, abusive families, right? Or Pet Sematary is depression and grief, right? For this book, it's like 100% about religion, because you get a little bit into the book, and I think it's part 2 when you get introduced to a character named David, who's like a 12-year-old boy, and you get like his backstory and sort of how he becomes sort of God-fearing and religious, and that definitely plays a bigger part in the book. And definitely religion comes up again and again and again in this book. So if that's something that interests you, that's definitely a big part of this book. And if it's something that does not interest you at all, then that might hinder your reading experience with this one. But for me, even though I'm not religious, I still like thinking about religion and the afterlife and all of that stuff. So having that be like sort of like an underlying theme for this book was definitely interesting for me. This book is also fun because it has tie-ins to a lot of other good Stephen King books, including Rose Matter, which, you know, I say good Stephen King books. That's not a great Stephen King book, but the character in here that's in Rose Matter is a good character, and she shows up in this book and is a good character in this book. And then also another like major connection between King books is a newer Stephen King book that came out a few years ago, The Outsider. And the ending of this book heavily ties into the ending of Desperation, which I thought was a pretty fun tie-in. So if anyone has read Desperation and hasn't read The Outsider, you would get a kick to it. And if anyone has read The Outsider but they haven't read Desperation, they would get a good kick out of it too. So yeah, the Stephen King multiverse is real, although it's not absolutely necessary. Because I get a lot of questions about like, oh, the Stephen King multiverse is so confusing. I have no idea where to start. Like, it's all Easter eggs. It doesn't matter. Like, just read whatever you want. Read whatever sounds appealing to you. And then eventually, once you start reading more, you get little snippets, snippets and Easter eggs here and there. So it's really not vital to read it in any kind of order. Just read whatever you want, and, you know, the Easter eggs will come to you. That's a weird slogan. The Easter eggs will come to you. But anyway, that's kind of like my rambly thoughts of Desperation. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it much more the second time around. I thought it was bonkers. And still, it's not one of my all-time favorites, but it has definitely risen up the rankings. Like, whenever I release my new and updated Stephen King ranking of all of his books, this will definitely be much higher than it was in my previous video, which came out last year, which I'll link down below. I believe this was fairly low, but this one will be much higher the second time around. Okay, so that was my review for Desperation, which was my Patreon winner for the month of May. And I've already spun the wheel and I figured out what my Patreon pick of June will be. And that book will be Carrie, which is one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books. I have not read it in quite a long time. I believe I've only read it once, maybe twice, I don't know, but I'm definitely going to be rereading it in June, which I'm very thankful for because I'm also taking part in the whatever-a-thon read-along thingy, whatever it's called, and kind of the goal for that is to like get a lot of points and to read shorter books. So having one of the shorter Stephen King novels there is as the Patreon winner is definitely helping me achieve that. And also, it's just one of my favorite Stephen King books in general. So be on the lookout for a review for this either at like the end of the month or at the beginning of July. But yes, definitely this will be the book that I read for my Patreon winner in the month of June. But anyway, that's been my book review for Desperation. Please let me know if you guys have read this book, and if you enjoyed it, please let me know why or why not. And just please let me know what you guys thought of this video down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and the Book Astronomer Discord. And if you'd like to further support me financially, go check out my Patreon page and see what that's all about. But anyway, thank you so much for watching and have a terrific day. Do it. Tak Allah, Can Tao, Tak Allah, Tak Allah. So Desperation it was a book, but now it's not. The fuck?